Eck is out of town today, so he asked me to step in and cover the recently released Borderlands. All that and more in today's video. Hey guys, this is Zack. Welcome back to another video, and as I mentioned in the intro, today we are talking Borderlands. Now, the movie has been out for a few days, and it has been thrashed critically and bombing commercially. Just to preface this a little bit with my experience with the series, I played about half of the first game when it first came out, some of the second game, and all of Tales from the Borderlands. So I'm not an expert on the lore and backstory of the series, but I am familiar with it. So when the first trailers came out, I could tell something was a little bit off here. However, I remain cautiously optimistic as I am a fan of the director, Eli Roth. Eli Roth is probably most notable for his work in the horror genre, specifically with movies like Cabin Fever, Hostel, and the recently released Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving was the one thing that made me kind of excited for this movie because it came out of nowhere last year. I did not expect that movie to be as good as it was. It was a fun slasher movie, so I thought, hey, maybe he has something he can bring to Borderlands. Unfortunately, that's not the case, as this movie is executive produced by somebody that Marvel fans are probably all too familiar with, Avi Arad. For those uninitiated, Avi Arad is probably best known for making the worst decisions for the Spider-Man movie franchise. He's responsible for shoehorning Venom into Spider-Man 3 despite Sam Raimi wanting nothing to do with the character and adding way too many plot lines to the Amazing Spider-Man series and inevitably releasing all of the solo Spider-Man villain spin-off movies. So seeing his name attached to Borderlands did set off a few red flags, especially with all of the news coming out of the movie's production with how messy it was. Craig Mazin, who you probably know as the showrunner of The Last of Us, was responsible for writing the original screenplay, but had his name removed from the project late last year. Yeah, it's always a bad sign when one of your screenwriters wants his name off of the project. That means something happened behind the scenes that he was probably not too happy with. Add into that the fact that they had another director come in and finish shooting the movie for the reshoots because Eli Roth was unavailable. Granted, they did get somebody who is pretty great in this genre, Tim Miller, director of Deadpool and Terminator Dark Fate. However, with all of these factors working for and against the movie, how did it turn out? Was it good? Was it bad? Let's talk about it. First, let's get the positive things out of the way, as I don't have too many of them. The action sequence at the beginning of the movie was pretty well done. There was some dynamic camera movements, and it was shot in a bit of a fun way. This was the best action sequence in the movie, and that's the problem. We'll come back to that after I'm done going over the other positives. Jack Black is doing a pretty good job being Claptrap. I know we're not really on his side right now, but he does a pretty decent job making it his own performance while still being true to the character. We also have Ariana Greenblatt doing a pretty good job as Tiny Tina. Of the main cast that's actually physically on set, she's the only one that really makes sense in this role. Krieg is pretty good too, but he doesn't have anything to do at all. My final major positive is that some of the things in the movie do look right. Some of the sets look really nice, even the costumes and the props all look like they're straight out of the game. The problem is when it's all in motion. Every other action sequence in this movie, apart from the first one, is shot so flat. Everything is a medium shot with a character shooting somebody off screen. There's not like a really fun action sequence, and there's like an attempt at a one shot in the middle of the movie that just doesn't work at all. It only lasts for about 30 seconds. It almost looks as if it was originally part of a really interesting and fun action sequence that they then had to cut out because of timing or budget or some other reason. I was hoping that maybe the reviews would mostly be negative on the story or the characters or something else, but even visually this movie is so boring. And with the people behind the camera, it just makes no sense to me. As I already established, Eli Roth is well versed in making action and doing big gory horror moments. This was a completely bloodless movie, and it made me really disappointed because it was the one thing that could have been interesting here. Certain action sequences seemed like the camera was framed where maybe they would add in some kind of digital blood spray or something similar was done on set and they cut it out afterwards. I honestly didn't realize that the movie was PG-13 until I sat down to watch it. A stark contrast to the very bloody game. And I think this could have worked in a PG-13 movie, they just needed to do it in a more interesting way that wasn't just a shot of the character shooting followed by another shot of all of the enemies falling down. There are so many times that happens in this movie. There's also probably the worst on-screen car chase I've ever seen in a movie. All of this headed by characters who just don't have enough backstory or aren't interesting enough to carry the story. So let's quickly just do a quick run through of the plot. Similar to in the game, there's a vault on Pandora that holds ancient technology. Where it differs from the game is instead of 3 keys, there's 2, and the chosen one, a descendant of the Iridians, needs to open up the vault. And with that information, they just drop you right into the story. Roland is breaking Tina out of prison along with Krieg, and a bounty hunter from Pandora is sent by the Atlas Corporation's head, named Atlas, to retrieve Tina. Now, let's go over the problems with each of the characters and how they tie into this story. From my understanding, Tiny Tina is not supposed to be some plot-sensitive character. She's just a psychopathic child who loves explosions. This movie changes her character to the genetic experimentation of Atlas, and she was created specifically to open the vault. And I think that kind of steps away from what makes Borderlands kind of unique. It isn't the kind of game or story that really lends itself well to like that hero or prophecy standpoint. It's about a group of unlikely heroes who are all driven by greed but then have to step up and stop the universe from being destroyed. I think a good movie to compare it to would be something like Guardians of the Galaxy, as that is clearly a big inspiration on this movie. The central character of Borderlands is Lilith. She is the main character and narrator of the movie. When introduced, she's just a cold-blooded bounty hunter who's just exceptionally skilled at everything she does. She treats Pandora as if it's just like a minor annoyance to her, when actually the movie goes over the fact that she has some very deep-rooted trauma with the planet. Compare that to Star-Lord. Not even 2 minutes into Guardians of the Galaxy, and we can already understand where this character is mentally. He lost his mother and his home on the same day, and that shaped him into this very hardened space cowboy. He's not exceptionally gifted at everything he does, though. He's a screw-up. He has very significant flaws that he overcomes throughout the movie. Both Star-Lord and Lilith enter the conflict of the movie coincidentally, and we learn that each of them has some kind of special ability they were born with. The major difference being Star-Lord earns this moment. The entire movie, he is trying to find out who he actually is, and in this moment, doing something selfless, he realizes what that is. Lilith just turns up at her childhood home and realizes she's the chosen one. Then turns up at the climax with a whole bunch of special abilities. Oh yeah, that's a big problem too, is that she is not just one of 6 sirens in the universe, she is the sole siren that is the chosen one of Pandora. That aside, I hope Cate Blanchett was paid well for this movie because she is just sleepwalking through this performance. Which is part of my problem. She just plays this hardened version of Hela from Thor Ragnarok. It's one of those movies where instead of doing something cool to gain audience appreciation, they just tell us she's really cool. I feel like the main character of this movie should have been very flawed and kind of more similar to like the Han Solo archetype. Somebody who's not a standard hero. No exceptional abilities or anything like that, they just need to be a standard person in this world. And even aside from her age, I will say I don't think Cate Blanchett was right for this role to begin with. Somebody who had better comedic timing should have been in this role, especially when paired against Roland, who in this movie is played by Kevin Hart, but they don't do anything funny with him. He's the straight man of the group, which is not where you want to put this actor. I feel like it would have worked better if we had somebody like Yahya Abdul-Mateen in the role, but that's just me. We never really learn anything about his character except for the fact that he was in the Crimson Lance. Jamie Lee Curtis as Tannis is one of the most confused aspects of this movie. She's trying to do something weird and different with this role, and it just doesn't work for me. It really sucks because I like Jamie Lee Curtis in a lot of movies, but she's just not doing anything here. There's also Edgar Ramirez as Atlas, who's just the most generic corpo villain that they could have put in this movie. And that's a big problem because Borderlands has some great villains. A lot of people were really mad Handsome Jack isn't in the movie at all, but honestly, I'm glad that they didn't try and include him in this mess. I also need to talk about one element of the movie that I can't believe made the final cut. I saw this on Twitter ahead of seeing the movie, and I was shocked when I actually saw it up on the big screen. There's a moment where the characters open up the vault, and you can actually see the production member helping them open the vault in the background. I get it, it happens on sets. I've accidentally dipped a microphone in front of the camera before, but this is like the shot for the movie. It's kind of crazy that nobody noticed it. It's just so wild to me that they could do so much wrong with this movie, because I believe there was a way that this movie could have been done right. We live in a new era where a lot of these creatives are allowing these video game adaptations to be a lot more similar to the games they're based on. Yes, there are missteps like the Halo series that was just canceled, but we have shows like Fallout that's respectful to the Fallout lore. Sonic the Hedgehog fans really love those movies. And even though I don't really like the Super Mario Bros. Movie, it's very faithful to the games it's based on. But then you get something like Borderlands that has these very iconic and very loved characters. Yes, they don't physically look like the characters in the game, and that is a problem for a lot of people, but I think the bigger issue is with the characterization that they go with for each of them. If you want a short comedian to play the role of Roland, you have to justify that choice very soon. And that's exactly the problem this movie has, is it doesn't justify any of its changes from the source material. Everybody is going to speculate on what went wrong with this movie, and I honestly really want to know, because I feel like there was the potential to make this really great. They had a solid production team with a great backlog of work. How is this the movie that we ended up getting? If this movie did one thing right, it made me want to go play the games again so I could experience the story the proper way instead of ever having to think about this movie again. That's all I have to say about the movie, though. Let me know down below what you think about it. If you went to go see it, if you didn't go to see it, I want to know your thoughts. Also, all of this gameplay footage you've been seeing throughout the video is from our new channel, XPlay. Currently, Ek is playing through Simpsons Hit and Run, and I've been playing Prince of Persia Sands of Time and Borderlands, so if you click on screen, you can go over there and check out that channel that we just started up. Thank you all for watching, and we will see you in the next video.